So welcome back everyone to our Surviving COVID-19 series. As per usual, you're joined by me, Freya, and Bianca.
Hi.
And today we will be doing Module 3, which is working and learning from home. So to start off with, thought we would check in on our intention from last week, talking about routine and which strategy we would try and use in our routine. So Bianca, how did you go with that last week?
Good. I used checklists throughout my day, throughout my work day. I found it quite helpful, I found it helpful kind of having everything broken down so I could kind of check things off. And it really helped me like stay motivated while I was ticking things off. I started to feel,
Great.
that sense of momentum, like I was getting things done. So it was
Fantastic.
It was really nice. It helped me kind of stay in a good rhythm, I think, throughout the day.
That's really good to hear.
How about you? What did you do?
So I decided to try out the scheduling in breaks throughout the day to sort of like help have a more normal work day. Yeah. So I decided to have lunch every day, set that aside, and it was sort of just nice to break up the day a little bit. And yeah, so it was really good.
Great, cool.
Yeah. So then let's talk a little bit about working and learning from home and maybe how we can make it a little bit easier with staying at home.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with why we're working from home. Probably seems a bit obvious to everyone, but I guess a big part of keeping people healthy involves minimizing contact, and that is a big thing that happens at work, people contacting each other. Also during the commute, especially if you're using things like public transport. So that means lots of people are working from home to reduce contact with other people. Working from home can be really challenging, especially I think if multiple members of the same household are all trying to work and or study from home. So you guys might have some experience with this if your housemates or your partner or whoever it is also working from home. And also if you have kids who are learning from home, it does lead to a lot of difficulties around managing what spaces are needed for different people and stuff like that. It can be really hard. Yeah. So while working from home keeps us all safe, it is not always easy. So naturally, those different feelings that we've been talking about over the last few weeks will arise while we're working from home, which is completely normal. Like we've talked about with COVID, there's all those thoughts and feelings that come up around that in general, but then adding to that having to work from home and potentially having to manage other people working or learning from home as well. There's probably more feelings coming up there as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting bringing it back to why we're doing this, why we're working from, why we're learning from home, because it can feel so overwhelming to do this and a little bit like, what's the point? But to bring it back to the fact that, we're trying to stay safe and healthy and help out our community can be so important to make it feel worthwhile what we're doing, the sacrifice that we're all making at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important, when you are having a bit of trouble with it, to remind yourself of why we have to do what we're doing at the moment, just to, I guess, put it into perspective a little bit. Yeah. So where do we start? I mean, obviously, we've been in lockdown for a little while, so people have probably already started, but here's our list of where to start if you're not sure or if you're feeling a bit stuck in your routine at the moment. So the first thing that would be important is to create like a workspace. So you don't have to have, a completely separate office. I mean, obviously some jobs might require something like that, but you don't have to have that. That would be nice if we could all have a separate office. But we just want to create a space where we're going to perform our work hours. So if possible, we're going to try and keep this space for working only and not doing other activities in that space, so we can keep it quite separate. But if we do need to use a space that we use for other reasons, for example, some people might not have an office but might use the dining table, we want to set it up to feel like a workspace when we're using it for work. and then make small changes so when we are using it for other activities, it feels quite different. We don't want to feel like we're overlapping and that we can just jump on the laptop at any point in time at the dining table, you know. We want to make it feel like a workspace, even if it is a space we're using for other things. Next, I would say use what your company has to offer. So if there's, you know, extra computer screens, if they've got notepads, if they've got headsets, whatever it is that kind of might make your job a little bit easier working from home, if it's on offer, use it. You know, I think often we kind of get in the zone of kind of like, no, it's okay, I'll manage, I can get by, that sort of stuff. But if that sort of stuff is on offer and it's going to make your life a whole lot easier, use that stuff. And if your company is offering it to you, you know, there's no reason you shouldn't use it. If you were in the office, you'd be using likely work computers or, you know, work notebooks or the pens or whatever it is. So there's no different working from home. If it's there and available to you, use that stuff if it makes your life a bit easier. Next thing I think is important is around communicating expectations. So working from home is going to be challenging for a lot of people, and you might need a little bit more flexibility. For example, if you have kids learning from home, or if there's certain points in time you might not be able to get to the phone. Say, for example, you have commitments with your kids, or with, you know, housemates have, you know, that sort of stuff, private spaces, stuff like that. You just need to communicate that with your employer. It's pretty likely that other people might need flexible arrangements too. I imagine there's at least someone else in the office that's going through something similar. So it's just important to communicate those expectations so that your workplace, your employer, your colleagues all know where you're standing and what those expectations are, so that they can also work around you. You know, if you need to work, you know, from 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. When you're working from home, communicate that so people know, you know, okay, so they're not going to be contactable between 8 and 10 a.m. So just little things like that. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier, as well as letting everyone else know what they can expect from you. The last one is routine. So we talked about routine last week. We really want to implement it when we're working from home. Working from home means our routine can fall over so quickly. For example, you know, that sleep schedule gets later and later. We start sleeping in until we have to get onto work. Then, you know, we wake up, oh my God, it's time for me to be at work, laptop in the bed, you know, working away. That's the sort of stuff we really want to avoid. So having a consistent work day is going to help you so much during this time. So try and follow your usual pre-work routine. So things like getting out of bed, getting out of your pajamas, try and put, you know, even if it's just a shirt on, you know, brushing your hair, all those little things that get you ready for your work day normally. It's going to help you get into your kind of work zone before you start your day. We want to do things like set regular lunch breaks like Freya did last week, and have a consistent finish time. You know, I want you to think about, you know, what would I be doing if I was at the office? If I finish at 5, would I be leaving the office at 5? Yeah, probably. And so just because you're at home, it doesn't mean that you then have permission to be working all through the night. The other thing I find people tend to do is, you know, they'll have their designated workspace or their office, and they'll think, oh, did I send that email? Oh, did that get done? And they'll go back into their work zone after work hours. This can be a really slippery slope. You know, a once off, you know, you might let it slide, but it can be a slippery slope if you're doing this kind of consistently. So if that sort of stuff is coming up, what I would suggest you do is think about, if I was working in the office, would I go back into the office to check my email? If the answer is no, I wouldn't be going back into your office to check that little thing or do that little thing, you know, because it ends up being a slippery slope. Just think about, you know, if I was in the office, would I drive back to the office to do that? The answer is no. Then you need to set a boundary and stick to that boundary.
That's such an interesting way of looking at it, really, to reframe it in that way, because at the end of the day, it is still work, isn't it, that we're doing? And just because we're doing it from home, it doesn't change the content of what we're doing. And to have those boundaries, and you know, when we're working from the office, it's clear what that boundary is. I'm home me. I'm at work, I'm work me. But at home, that's something that we have to decide for ourselves and put in place those boundaries. So
Yeah, and it does start to slip, and it is a slippery slope once you start kind of blurring those boundaries. And we will kind of go through boundaries in detail a little bit later on, but it can slip so quickly, so it's important to kind of hold firm on those things. Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about then, we've gotten dressed for the day, we've gotten changed out of our pajamas, started work. How do we maintain that motivation when we've gone through lots of days of lockdown, sort of starting to drag on a little bit? I guess a good place to start is to just reset your expectations. What is realistic for me while working from home? This is a difficult time, and it's likely that we're not going to be as productive as before. And that's just like something that maybe we need to think about. That's a likely thing that's going to come from working from home. And I guess it's good to know that, to be like, this is going to be okay. I'm not going to be as productive as before, but this situation is just so different from what it normally would be. Working from home, you don't have the same people around you. It's not that same energy. Just being in an office in and of itself, you feel really motivated to do stuff. So accepting maybe a slightly lower level of productivity is going to be really helpful. And also can help feeling maybe like to reduce that feeling of feeling deflated at the end of the day, when maybe you're like, oh, I'm not like that normal productive self that I would be, kicking all these goals, get on top of everything. It's going to be like, okay, I didn't have a really productive day today, but that's okay. It's just part of this process that we're all going through. So I guess just lower those expectations a little bit for all of us.
Yeah.
Have that compassion for ourselves and have that compassion for other people going through it too. We're going to allow other people to be slightly less productive. Let's allow ourselves to be less productive as well. Mm-hmm. So what is realistic? Let's set realistic goals about what is most important now. And maybe that means, prioritizing things. We've got a lot of things on our to-do list. Let's see what is the most important thing on that to-do list. And does it mean, setting that realistic goal? Does it mean the kids are going to be spending more time on screens? Maybe it's about relaxing those goals that you previously would have had. They can be on the tablet while you're finishing off work in the afternoon. And I guess like thinking about what is the important thing at the moment? What is really important? Is it, getting everything ticked off, or is it, making sure that everybody is healthy and happy and well-being? And I guess another thing to think about as well with both of those things is to realise that the nature of people's work has really changed as well. So we're not just working from home and doing the exact same thing. It's different. Maybe a lot of the work that you were doing isn't there before. Maybe you're not as busy as you would be in the office because people aren't allowed to go out, and your business isn't doing the normal things it would be. So I think we're going to have to tolerate a level of, maybe a little bit of boredom or a little bit of time in the day where you'd be taking an extra long break that you wouldn't normally be taking. But it's the very nature of the situation we're going through changes our work as well. Yeah.
And I think too, I've definitely talked to clients around, the house isn't spotless right now. And is that okay? And so, like you were saying, Freya, I think it is around priorities and, is getting the kids through the day of school more important than the house being spotless right now? Can I tolerate that for a little while this is all going on? So, it is, there's little things that probably are going to eat away at you a little bit, but can I just tolerate that for the time being? Because what's more important is people being happy, healthy, getting through school, getting through work, that sort of stuff. So it is really taking a look at what's your priority right now.
Yeah, that's really true. What is the priority at home? And I think we speak about as well a lot, like, what do we value? Mm-hmm. So like there's all these to-do lists, but what are the things that are important to me, in my life and in the life of my family and the people I live with? And really trying to find a way to move with those values.
Absolutely.
as we are working from home. So maybe having like a fantastic home cooked meal is something you'd really like to do, but the thing that you are really valuing at the moment is the fact that, you know, you can just relax and enjoy that time with your kids rather than feeling stressed about cooking that dinner. And so I guess that leads us on to the next point, which is we need to celebrate the small wins.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that's not going all of our way at the moment. There's lots of things that maybe we can feel like disappointed about, beat ourselves up about, but it's so hard to recognize those wins when they happen. And I think we really need to celebrate the small wins and make a big deal about it. Yeah. And like you say, it's whether it's work related or not. So, you know, you get your task done, you finish all your emails for the day. That's amazing. Well done. You know, really pat yourself on the back. Give yourself a cup of tea. Have a Vicky.
Yeah.
Let a colleague know, you know, like let's really celebrate those small wins. And whether it's like the kids, you know, they did an awesome day at school today, celebrate it with them. You know, while this time is something that we're all trying to survive and we're all trying to cope, let's not lose the positives in this situation. Even if they're really tiny, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Take those small wins and run with them because you need all the joy we can get at the moment. So whatever it is, however small it is, you know, make it a big thing. Celebrate it.
For sure. Make a big song and dance out of it. Yeah, create a work routine. Think about how you move into your work role while still at home. I think we're all sort of realizing the importance of like the routine and the ritual. It's almost like a ritual, isn't it? Getting ready in the morning. It's like, it's quite meaningful going through that process of getting ready, getting up with enough time, having, you know, having that cup of tea, having that coffee, having that shower, you know, like brushing your hair while listening to the radio. Those things actually have meaning and set the I guess the mindset and the intention for your day by having that ritual that you go through. And so we might need to create a bit of a different work routine than we would have when we're not working from home. So, you know, I think that commute to work has really, we've all seen that that can be a real like divider in time and a marker to shift your mindset from home Freya or home Bianca to work Freya, work Bianca, and to really get into that role. And as well, coming home, you know, that feeling of, you know, shedding that part of ourselves that was at work and giving ourselves that time to shift so that we can be on for our loved ones when we do get home, or on for ourselves to be like, oh, I'm going to do the things that bring me value and bring my family value and happiness. So really think about what your work routine at home is going to be like. And I think try and keep those things that you were doing before working from home, like we spoke about, you know, getting out of bed with enough time, getting changed out of your pajamas, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, like you're talking about that commute thing and switching while you're in the commute, you know, you can simulate a commute. You could go for a morning walk, or you could, you know, even listen to the radio while you're in the shower if you usually listen to the radio on the way to work. You can listen to a podcast. You can do those little things that feel like you're kind of on your way to work. Even if it is, you know, making a coffee in your keep cup instead of a regular cup, so it feels like you're kind of on the way somewhere, you know, all those little things that just make it feel like you're transitioning into, I guess, a different role.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really good point. I think that like idea of going for a walk in the morning, so that when you come back from the walk, you know, this is work time. Yeah. It's delineating that point in time. So whether that's like, yeah, going for a walk, stepping outside to get the mail, you know, sitting in the sun for a little bit while you listen to a podcast, like you say, those are just like a really helpful way to sort of simulate exactly that shift. And again, at the end of the day, think about how you're going to do that. What is that ritual going to be? Is that going to be having a nice long cup of tea and just giving your mind like some space before you move into home life? Yeah. Another one that I've spoken about is, you know, like turning off your laptop, turning off your phone, whatever it's going to be, shutting those tabs if it's your normal personal laptop, to be like, work is done, closing that off, putting my laptop away, putting it out of sight. Like, those things can be quite powerful to just signal that the work day is really done.
Absolutely.
And another one, staying connected. You've heard it once, you've heard it 100 times, but it is just so true. Really try and continue and foster those connections with our colleagues during the day, whether it's sending, you know, a good morning email to an associate at work, like a colleague, or whether it's like you've got a Teams sort of set up or Google Hangouts, whatever it is, you know, get involved in that workplace culture, get involved in staying connected. And let people know, and that's part of it too, letting people know if you're struggling at the moment and if you need assistance. I think we're really seeing a shift at the moment, Bianca, in terms of accepting sort of like people's mental health during lockdown. I think there has, and we can all understand there has been a stigma associated with like saying that you're struggling, but I think at the moment it's really being normalized and accepted that it is a really hard time, and it's okay to put your hand up and say, actually, I'm having a tough week and I think I just need a bit of help, or I need a bit of space.
Or even if it is, you know, I actually can't take on that extra project this week, you know, it might be that you need extra support, but it also might just be, you know, trying to say no in small ways if, you know, it is becoming too much. And again, we will get to boundaries, but, you know, important to note.
That is so true. Yeah. Trying not to take on more than you can at the moment. After work catch-ups, virtual after work catch-ups. No, lots of different ways that that can be organised and arranged, and like we spoke about, really important to try and say yes to these things that maybe we normally wouldn't, because things aren't as normal, and staying connected with your friends and family too.
Boundaries, I promised, and here we are. So boundaries and how to keep them in check, because that's the tricky part. You know, it's easy enough to set a boundary, but I think it's also maintaining them and keeping them in check and making sure you're on top of it that can be the hard part. So using your dedicated workspace, we kind of touched on this before, but setting it up to really just be for work only. And if you do need it for other time, removing your work equipment. So just like Freya said, you know, things like closing all the work tabs, shutting the laptop, putting it away, that sort of stuff is really powerful in shifting from work self to home self. We really want to have a clear boundary between who I am at work and who I am at home, and how I show up. And so those, you know, contextual setting kind of things really make a difference with that sort of stuff. So it is about, you know, only using that workspace for work. When work's done, if you need it for something else, putting that stuff away, out of sight, you know, really switching back into home self and enjoying home self. And, you know, that thought around, you know, would I go back into work for this? The answer is no, don't pick up the laptop. All right. So the next one is around finding some work rituals. So, you know, we kind of touched on this before a little bit as well, in terms of, you know, the commute and things like that. But, you know, it is like a ritual, right? There's these little rituals that we have at work that maybe we haven't translated to home. And this stuff could be helpful, I guess, just in reminding yourself that you're at work. And so that might be, you know, having a specific coffee mug that you use during work time, because at work you would have a coffee mug that you use there, right? Or you would be using your Keep cup. So, you know, stuff like that, just trying to simulate it at home so it feels more like a work day. Putting on a work shirt, so getting out of those pajamas, putting on clothes that resemble work clothes. You know, maybe you're casual down the bottom because you're on Zoom or whatever it is, but trying to make the effort to at least, you know, put on a shirt that would be appropriate for work. Just again, so you are shifting and you are simulating that transition from home self to work self. Things like packing your lunch, you know, stuff like that can be really helpful in simulating a work day and reminding you to take a lunch break. So, you know, even if it is, you know, you're packing your leftovers after dinner the night before and putting it in the fridge, you know that you're going to be at home, but you'll just go get it heated up like you would at work. And, you know, you might even have a Zoom lunch with someone and sit there and pack lunches together. You know, it can also be helpful for kids, I think, you know, learning from home, because it actually might also help you stay a little bit separate in your work role if your lunchtime isn't maybe at the same time as the kids, and then you don't have to be doing, you know, all that extra stuff that you're doing to prepare lunches if they're already packed and in the fridge kind of ready to go. So it does kind of simulate, you know, them going to school, you going to work, and you having your kind of separate stuff going on. So that kind of stuff can be really helpful. So just like any sort of rituals that remind you you're at work, you know, if you have a work phone separate to your personal phone, you know, turning your work phone off at the end of the day, stuff like that. You just want to find those little work rituals that are going to help you remind yourself, oh, I'm at work now. Then we're going to move into setting your work hours and sticking to them. So Freya was talking about this before as well, but having a distinct start and end time to your work day and factoring those breaks in. So we really want to make sure we're taking breaks throughout the day. If packing your lunch helps with that, great. But, you know, thinking about transition times into your work day, thinking about transitioning out of the work day, you know, how are you going to do those things and how are you going to delineate home self from work self?
And maybe that involves like also, and this is something that we've all been sort of dealing with in the transition from, you know, like the digital world, getting these notifications on our phones about emails and things like that. It could also just be about, you know, thinking, am I getting emails sent to my personal phone during the night? Is that something I want to do as well?
Exactly. And I think too, you know, if other people aren't following these sorts of routines, you can see other people start to slip into that. So you'll start to get emails later, you know, the sort of work stuff arriving on your phone, giving you notifications later in the day, later and later in the day. You know, at 9 p.m. at night, and you're thinking, oh my God, is this person still working? Like, should I still be doing that? So to kind of manage your anxiety around that, it might be, you know, taking your work emails off your phone, only having them on the laptop for when you are in designated work time. Because as easy as it is, well, it's not easy, but, you know, it is in your control to set your work hours, but it's out of your control to set someone else's. And so that kind of stuff might just, you know, make you tempted to, oh, I'll just quickly reply to this. I'm on my phone, I'm not in my office, whatever it is. So it might be worth, you know, making that concerted effort to take that sort of stuff off your phone so it's not accessible to you all the time. The other thing is just taking your days off seriously. Especially during this time, we really need balance. There's so much going on. We really need to factor in some self-care time, some stuff for ourselves. So if you know, have Saturday, Sunday off, take it off. Do not go into the office. Do not log on to your emails. You know, think again, would I go into the office on a Saturday? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be doing it while you're working from home, just because you're working from home. So, you know, take some time for yourself, spend some time with the family if you're able to, you know, set up some FaceTimes or some Zooms, connect in different ways, and take some time for yourself. You know, you really need a break during this time. That fatigue can be really overwhelming. So even if it is just relaxing and binge watching some TV, whatever it is, take some time for yourself. Learning to say no, we kind of touched on this before. You're probably not going to be able to do everything that you were once able to do, especially pre-lockdown, you know, when we were in our productive states, we had that routine going on. So it's okay to say no if you don't have capacity to take something on. And like we were talking about before around, you know, communicating with managers and colleagues around expectations and that sort of stuff. It's also important to put that boundary in place of actually, no, I can't take that extra thing on. I'm struggling at home at the moment and it's just, you know, not within my capability right now. And, you know, you can even set it up as, I can't right now. Once we're back in the office, I would reconsider if that's something you feel like you're able to do. But I think, you know, it is important to keep check of what you've got going on at the moment, what you feel like you're managing. If you feel like it's too much, you know, potentially asking for help. If you feel like you've got just enough on your plate and you couldn't fit another thing, you know, learning to say, no, I actually can't take that on right now. And I think, you know, it's the experience that a lot of people are having at the moment.
Yes, that's a really good one, and I think it can be a hard one to do, but it
Absolutely.
can be really empowering as well to set those boundaries. And I think it's one of those things that's going to be tricky to begin with, but once you learn how to do that, it's a really useful skill in, all parts of our lives, not just in work as well.
And I think too, on that, when you do start to say no, if you've always been someone who says yes, takes on extra things, even if, you need to work an extra little bit, or, you don't feel like you can, but you always say yes anyway, when you start to put those boundaries in place, it can be really empowering for you, but also it teaches other people that you can't always say yes. And so perhaps they won't ask as much because they'll know that you now have this boundary in place.
Mm-hmm. And so it is a skill to practice as well.
Absolutely.
Like it's something that's developing, and maybe it's about finding the right way for you to say no as well, to think about how that would fit into your own language.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's what we're kind of touching on around, is it no, I can't take on anymore? Is it I need help? Is it no, I'd be happy to reconsider at another point in time? Is it no, not until I finish this project? There's lots of different ways you can go about it, but I guess it's about figuring out what sits with you, what aligns with your values, and also being mindful of where you're at and what you're able to take on. So I think it's important to be mindful of, where you're at work and how you're feeling in terms of your workload.
Yeah, and often I think when we're asked to do something, you sort of put on the spot a little bit, So, sometimes it comes through an email and you have enough time to think about it, but sometimes it is the phone call where it's like, I need you to do this. Okay, let's just take a minute, and it's okay to give like a, just a little time holder to say, can I get back to you on that? I just need to think about what's going on. So you can give yourself that opportunity to think about what really is happening, because it can be really on the spot, especially if you're used to saying yes, to say, sure, no problem. And then you think about it and you think, oh my goodness, I actually just have so much going on. I don't have time to do that. And again, if that is the case, if you have said yes to something, it's also okay to say, actually, I've thought about that. I've thought about it a bit more and I just don't have the time for that right now. It's okay to, I guess, to go back on what you've said, or just to like reevaluate a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're all really good points, especially, giving yourself some space, saying, hey, can I think about that? It does give you the space to actually evaluate, okay, where am I at and what am I able to take on? And you're right, you can change your mind. You can go back to someone and say, hey, I've actually thought about it and reevaluated my workload, and currently I won't be able to take that on right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay, that happens. Yeah. And then the other one we've kind of talked a little bit about already as well. So just finding a way to get into your work mode, whether that's faking a commute, going for a walk, listening to a podcast, radio. I think it's nice to do something that is actually reminiscent of your commute to work. If you do generally have to walk somewhere, going for a walk, even just around the block, can be helpful just to get you in the mode. If you do listen to the radio, putting the radio on, whether it's in your headphones or while you're in the shower, if you usually listen to podcasts, trying to incorporate that. If you usually get a coffee on the way, whether it's walking to the local cafe and getting a coffee and coming back to work, or whether it's, going to the kitchen and making one in a to-go cup or a keep cup to bring into the office or bring into your workspace. It's all those little things that are going to help you transition into your work role. And then you also want to think about, how am I going to transition out of my work role? So do I usually listen to the radio on the way home? Do I listen to a podcast? Do I go for a walk? Do I, get a juice at the end of the day? What is it that you usually do at the end of the day to wind down? Is it a virtual debrief with your colleagues? Those sorts of things can be really helpful just to process your day and get you back into a good headspace for home self.
Yeah.
So I think, thinking about either side of your day and how you're going to work yourself into work mode and how you're going to work yourself into home mode when you're finished.
Yeah, and I think that normally that commute is very significant in leaving the space associated with work.
Yeah.
So that's really hard, because the place that we're associating with work right now is home. And so I think maybe one way that can be sort of helpful is to have like a little bit of imagery around, like, how am I transitioning from work Freya to home Freya, and whether that involves like a meditation where I'm letting go of things and thinking about shedding that role in myself, but, you know, finding some sort of imagery about stepping out of yourself, your work self, to your home self might be like something that you might want to explore. I guess it's about creating new rituals as well.
Yeah. And bringing your values in as well, you know, what do I value at work versus what do I value at home, and how do I bring that? You know, those little things that you can think about, you know, when you are transitioning can be really helpful, because we do it subconsciously when we are kind of commuting into the office or whatever it is. But it's, you know, it's thinking about how do I bring that to home, and do I have to consciously think about, you know, what are my values at work and what am I trying to bring to work, and what are my values at home and what am I trying to bring to home, and how do I transition, you know, between those two people. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit on working from home, where there's also people learning from home, which can be really challenging because there's a lot of things to, I guess, think about and manage in this sort of space. So like you would create a dedicated workspace for yourself, we want to create a dedicated workspace for everyone. So even if you are using the dining table, everyone should have their own specific seat that they sit in every day, and that is their workspace. You know, if you do have the luxury of having different spaces, that's great too. But just making sure everyone has their own kind of dedicated space to work or learn from, and they know that that's their space and that's where they work. Similarly, like we talked about before, setting it up to feel like a workspace, and then also packing that down when the end of the day comes. We don't want to be kind of mixing our home and work selves. Routine, again, we're back on the routine bandwagon. We love routine.
We love routine. I honestly have a newfound appreciation for routine.
Yeah, well, we don't realize how subconsciously it comes, you know, through school, that sort of stuff. Specifically school, it's very structured, so routine is essential in learning from home. So this is going to be even more important if you're factoring in the kids' needs as well as your own. So you might need to do things like set reminders in your phones, book things into your calendar, organize your time. You know, it might be about setting periods of time that the kids will be working and setting an alarm for when it's finished. You know, those little things that are going to help with time management and routine. But the quicker you get into a routine and have it set, the quicker the kids will start to follow it without your guidance. So, you know, routine can be really helpful in, you know, managing time, but also managing, I guess, your work and their work, which can be really hard. But once they're in a routine, it will be easier for them to kind of follow. And you want to kind of simulate the structure that they get at school at home. Breaks, just as importantly, we need to schedule in those breaks and make sure we take them, even the kids. So, you know, at that time, it might be a nice time to not talk about work and school and just connect as a family instead. You know, do we want to step out of that role for a second and just take a breather, have a break, have a real break, right? Because we find probably at work, you know, we take breaks and we end up talking about work a lot on our breaks. So it might be nice to, you know, connect around something else and not be about work or school. In terms of rewards, it can be really helpful to maintain motivation. And this is kind of what we were talking about a little while ago about celebrating the small things, right? So we want to reward, you know, if the kids have got through their maths lesson and that's been really hard previously, you want to really, you know, celebrate that, reward that. That's amazing. You got through your maths lesson. You know, if they got on their school Zoom and they're usually really shy, but they turned the camera on today, you know, all that little stuff. We're celebrating those small wins. We're rewarding them for that great behavior. You know, stuff like that can be really important. But also, you know, reward yourself. You know, if you get something done or clear all your emails or whatever it is, you know, even if it is having a break for 5 minutes with a cup of tea, even if it is just, you know, telling a colleague, oh, guess what I did, you know, it's all those little intrinsic rewards that we get when we're at work or when we're at school, that we need to simulate in the home environment as well. So just celebrating small things as they come up. And then the last one is just being a bit flexible. So think about what's most important and prioritize your time. So things aren't going to go to plan all the time. The house might be messier than usual. The kids might be getting some extra screen time. Just ask yourself, you know, can I allow this temporarily while we're getting through this tough time? Because this isn't going to be forever, right? It is going to be temporary. We will get through it. And can I allow myself a little bit of space, a little bit of grace, some self-compassion during this time while everything's really hard and I'm trying to manage all this stuff, can I just let the kids have 10 minutes extra screen time while I finish this task off? Is it okay that the floor hasn't been mopped in, a month? We're not having visitors anyway, so no one's going to see it. Is it okay if we get takeaway 2 nights in a row because I just am so exhausted and I don't want to cook? Being a bit flexible, being a bit compassionate with yourself, allowing those little things to kind of slide, because this is temporary. It's really tough, and you need to give yourself some kindness and some compassion, and concentrate on what the priority is right now. What are your values? What's the most important thing? And if that's making sure everyone's happy and healthy and getting through school and work, that sort of stuff, then some of that other stuff might have to be a little bit more flexible than usual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so with all that going on at home, learning, working, also just being at home a lot of our time, so important to look after yourself. And we talk about this a lot in terms of like self-care. And maybe it sounds like one of those things that it's like a bit token, like self-care. But it's actually really important, and it goes a bit deeper than just like, doing a face mask. It goes to actually looking after yourself and what you need. And so it is about like, asking for help if you need it. Do I need help right now? Things are kind of hard. Things aren't normal. Maybe I need a bit of help from a loved one. Maybe I need a little bit of help from a friend or something like that, to make me some food and drop it off. Mm-hmm. Health professionals, do you have a GP you can talk to? Check in on how things are going. Speak to your psychologist. Maybe it's somebody you haven't seen for a while. Now's a great time to reach out again and reconnect. I think a lot of people are doing that, to sort of just be like, hey, we're going through a hard time. I just want to keep track of how I'm doing, and I want to be aware of the habits and the patterns that I'm creating. No one will know if you don't ask. And we often like to think that somebody will know. And yeah, it's great to check in. When somebody does check in, you need to let them know, or you need to reach out yourself and be proactive to let them know that things aren't going well. And that's okay. And you can get help, and we will get through this. So it's a real message of hope, I guess, to acknowledge that things are hard, because then you can move forward from there. Go easy on yourself. It's not going to be perfect. Life is never perfect, but especially now, things aren't going to be perfect. You're doing the best you can right now. We're all doing the best we can right now with the tools you have right now. Yeah. We're all doing the best we can, I guess, is the point there.
Yeah.
Take a break. Use your days off, rest and recover. Enjoy that time off, even if it feels a little bit the same and the days start to blur into one another. Really try and embrace those days off and make use of them, and recuperate and rest and do those things that are really reinvigorating for yourself, and that really give you like a sense of purpose and value and sort of like restfulness, because it can be really easy for those lines to get blurred and for those days to drag into one another. And we can all feel that a little bit, like the days are sort of melting into one another. So really try and make use of those days where you have some time off to do something that is for you. So that comes to like self-care. Hopefully you know a little bit about yourself and what makes you feel good. But I guess like places to start is to think about like what sort of pleasant things do you do that you feel like rewarded and like a bit more like yourself after doing? Is it a bit of meditation? Some people it might be meditation. Some people it might be like making a cup of lovely loose leaf tea and using the nice china. Sometimes it might be just like 5 minutes alone to be like, nobody talk to me. I just need 5 minutes alone. Could be like playing with your kids, really mindfully getting involved, noticing what they're doing and like paying attention to them. Taking your pet for a walk. It's a great excuse to get out of the house, get out in nature. And that mindfulness exercise as well. So while it's good to have those days off where you really make use of those days to take a rest and to do things, also just take time for yourself each and every single day. And I guess one of the things to think about is that, you know, it's worthwhile looking after yourself because you deserve it. Just in and of yourself, you deserve to look after, but also for the people around you. It's important to look after yourself first so you can look after other people too.
Yeah. And you know, those things can be 2 minutes. It can be the shortest amount of time, but just taking at least a couple minutes each day just for something that makes you feel good. Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, Freya, should we set an intention of what we're going to work on our routines this week?
I guess I might, there's actually so much that I really want to take away from this. So I'm going to try and just choose one because I don't want to overwhelm myself. I think I'm going to try and find like something that helps me shift at the end of the day out of like work Freya to home Freya. So I think that maybe it's just like really putting my laptop away and like maybe even like I'm going to switch it off. I think I'm going to switch it off and put it away. Yeah.
Great. Cool.
What about you, Bianca?
I think I'm going to try some work rituals. We've been working at home for a little while now, and I feel like I've got the hang of it a bit, but I feel like this could really add to it. I'm going to try, you know, just have a designated coffee mug for work.
Nice.
You know, make my space feel very worky and really try not to use my space for anything other than work. And if I do, switching it way up so it doesn't even feel like it was a workspace before.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm keen to hear how it goes next week.
Yeah. So everyone who's listening, you know, think about what you might do differently working from home or learning from home over the next week. Set an intention, you know, make it concrete, you know, write it down, whatever it is. Set that goal, and we will, I guess, check again next week and see how everyone's going with that, and check in with ourselves to keep ourselves accountable as well. Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening to this webinar, and we'll be back with you again in a week's time to talk all things mindfulness, self-compassion, self-care sort of stuff.
Beautiful. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.